Good evening, everyone. This is the Port of Bellingham Board of Commissioners regular scheduled meeting for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. I'll start with roll call. Commissioner Briscoe.
Here.
Commissioner Shepard.
Also here.
And Commissioner Bell is here. I'm going to start by closing our executive session and opening the public meeting. And then start with the advisory committees. September 10th, we're going to have our Marine Advisory Committee. We finally get one of those back this week, next week. It's going to be here in the Harbor Center building. Again, that's September 10th at 6 p.m., Marine Advisory Committee. And then our Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee will be live and Zoom on October 17th at 4 p.m. And that's our BIAC meeting. That's going to be held live at the ARF building, our aircraft rescue firefighting station at 2005 West Bakerview Road in Bellingham, or you can Zoom in. Just check our website for that Zoom. We have two public comment periods here at the port. Anybody online wish to comment, just raise your hand. Anybody here in the audience, please come to the microphone. Do we have anybody signed up? Nobody signed up. So if anybody wishes to speak to the Port Commission on any subject whatsoever, somebody at least tell a joke. Anybody online?
Just staff. Nobody has any answers.
We will have another one at the end of the meeting for anyone interested. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Should we do new hire?
Oh, sure. We should probably, because that's the next thing on my list.
Good afternoon, Commission. Tiffany DeSimone, Director of Maritime, and I'm here to introduce our new security manager, Ryan Rockham. He will be managing our 10 security officers for the security program that we run, as well as doing emergency management operations. He comes to us from the police department in Anchorage, Alaska. He was raised here in Whatcom County and retired up there after 25 years, has come back to Whatcom County and is joining the port. So we're happy to have him.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Stephanie Wiley, Community Outreach Manager, and I'm introducing Andrew Silverman, our new Community Outreach Specialist. He has a degree in media and production and is going to be working on social media, doing photography, videography, drone work for the port, replacing Jerry McGarity, who's going to be retiring. So.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Joe Spencer. I'm the Bellingham Cruise Terminal Manager, and I want to introduce Amelia Vogel. She comes to us from Avellino, where she was a baker, making all those fantastic cakes. And she is our new ticketing agent and taking care of all of our folks going up to Alaska. So thank you to Amelia.
Did they replace you at Avellino's? Yes. I'm worried about that.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Douglas Scott, the Sustainability Program Manager, and I want to introduce Danica Holt, who's online today. Danica is a recent grad from Western Washington University. She is our Energy Management Program intern. So we have her for 6 months, which is amazing. She has been such a good contribution to the port. We really appreciate her. Fun fact, she's a Danish citizen, so if you have any questions in Danish, she can answer those. And apparently she also likes roller skating, although maybe slightly less this week as she enjoyed herself.
I just broke my wrist roller skating.
I don't even have a joke for that.
We're going to need x-rays.
All right, thank you all.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks, everybody. Welcome aboard. If any of you think you need extra security, that's the guy you need to talk to now that you're a part of the port. All right, consent agenda.
All right. Motion to approve consent agenda items A through E.
Mr. Shepard,
I don't have any questions at this time.
Mr. Briscoe,
I have no questions.
and I have no questions.
All
I
right.
think I got them all answered. Thank you.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through E.
Commissioner Briscoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is a yes. Commissioner Shepard,
Also yes.
I went out of turn, I'm sorry. All right, presentation, Green Marine update. Adrian.
Do you want a joke? This is one my kid told me a couple years ago, and I giggled for at least 10 minutes. So high expectations. What did the janitor say when he jumped out of his closet? Supplies. Anyway,
Good one.
it's suitable for most audiences, hopefully. Okay, so again, my name is Adrienne Douglas Scott.
Visual on that was everything.
Exactly. My name is Adrienne Douglas Scott. I'm the Sustainability Program Manager here for the Port of Bellingham. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm really excited to bring you this presentation. This is something we've been working on since before COVID. We are officially certified and have had our third-party verification for the Green Marine Standard. Those are fireworks in the middle of the screen, just in case you're wondering. And this really ties together a lot of stuff, a lot of that good environmental work that we've been doing over years, and gives us sort of guardrails for moving forward with that. So I'm going to give you a little agenda slide and then introduce my colleague who's online as well. So we're going to go through what Green Marine is, why the port is participating, the scope of our certification here at the Port of Bellingham, how we got certified and how we stay certified, the current status of our certification, which is measured in performance indicator status, and the next steps for those. So I just want to say, first of all, that I've been working in environmental certification for quite a long time. More than 20 years. I've been with the port for about 7. And it was really great when I first started at the port. We had a couple of certifications that were specific to different areas, the EnviroStars and Clean Marina. We still have those. This builds on that. It's a more internationally recognized standard. It's a little more rigorous because it does have third-party verification, and it has more industry input and environmental group input than those other two as well. So when we first started looking at this, I thought, oh, that would be such a great program for us at the port. Next up, I want to introduce Eleanor Kirtley, who's the Senior Program Manager for the West Coast for Green Marine. Eleanor has connected us with a lot of great people and a lot of great programs, so I will turn it over to you, Eleanor.
Great. Thank you, Adrienne. Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about Green Marine and our history working with the Port of Bellingham. I am based in Seattle, Washington. I've been with the program now for the last 10 years. So happy to give you kind of like an overview on the who, what, where, why, and when, and totally open to your questions as we go. So if we'll pull up the slides, I think we'll start with the one that says Green Marine is. Is that visible to those in the room? Great, perfect. So as Adrienne said, we're a voluntary environmental certification program. We've been around for the last 17 years, originally founded in the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence region. So binational and bilingual from the start, really stemming from the issue of aquatic invasive species. So ballast water discharges coming into the lake, and the industry recognizing that they really needed to take on more stewardship measures, not just a marketing campaign, but something based on concrete actions, working with stakeholders, particularly regulatory agencies, community groups, to make sure that the industry could maintain kind of the trust to operate and maintain commerce on these bodies of water. So our main goals are exceeding regulatory compliance, really promoting a culture, recognizing that it goes back to the people who really are the ones implementing these measures and affected by it. Our main product are our benchmarking tools, the performance indicators that our participants report to every year. And then we release our annual performance report at the annual conference called Green Tech. And kind of how we come up with all these KPIs is through our partnership method, very collaborative and inclusive across our membership and subject matter experts, and making sure that all of those criteria are up on the website to kind of continue that conversation through the year of what it is that we're doing. Okay, next slide. So now 17 years later, I can proudly say we are the most comprehensive environmental initiative to date for the maritime industry that is both in the environmental impacts that we cover within our program scope and also the composition of the membership. So across North America, also extended to Green Marine Europe since 2020. So uniquely, we are certifying both vessel side and land side. So port authorities, terminal operators, shipyards, and the St. Lawrence Seaway, where each of these sectors have sector-specific performance indicators that they are reporting to and then getting independently verified. Next slide. So here's our map of our participants, colored by participant type. Across the US and Canada, you can see we've been broadly adopted through the Great Lakes. Exciting for me out here to see the growth on our coast. Now in Washington State, your peer ports in the program are Seattle, Northwest Seaport Alliance, Olympia, Everett, Anacortes, and then Port of Longview is the newest participant to rejoin us into the program. And then we also have a number of terminal operators you'll see on the West Coast, like Ports America, SSA, Metroports, DP World in Canada. And then that one dot you see in Alaska, that's the Alaska Marine Highway System, which we know is a tenant of the Port of Bellingham. Next slide. In addition to the participants, those are the members who get certified. We have 3 more member categories. Those are the partners, associations, and supporters. So wanting to make sure we have quite the breadth and the depth of those engaged in the program, on average growing over 10% per year. Once you include the members that are part of Green Marine Europe, so now within our umbrella organization that was incorporated earlier this year of Green Marine International, we have over 500 member organizations. So about 40% are the participants. The partners are about 30%. Those are companies, for-profit companies. That might be the technology developers, vendors, consultants, other suppliers. The associations are about 10%. Their members may overlap with our members. For example, Washington Maritime Blue and Green Marine have reciprocal membership in this category. And then supporter members are where we have the environmental groups, government agencies that help us develop the performance indicators. Next slide. A little feature of some of the supporter logos that we have in the program, often serving as that subject matter expertise, but also particularly on the regulatory side, really helping to kind of inform what is that baseline that we have to go above and beyond. Next slide. So here's the different icons of all the different performance indicators in the program, broadly covering impacts to air, land, water, communities, and marine mammals. Specifically on the port side, there's 8 greenhouse gases and air pollutants, spill prevention and stormwater management, big one here in Washington State, community impacts, environmental leadership, that one's a little bit of a catch-all bucket, waste management, community relations, aquatic ecosystems is the newest one that was added into the program 2 years ago that were quite adaptive and dynamic in the issues that we cover to go above and beyond compliance. And then underwater noise was added before aquatic ecosystems a number of years ago. And you can see that the icon outline is colored by participant type. So you're looking at the ones in light blue that are applicable. Next slide. So for each performance indicator, we're defining criteria on a scale of levels 1 to 5. Level 1 is the same for all PIs. It's the monitoring of regulations. Do you have someone on staff who is like trained, resourced, responsible for knowing what their local, state, federal, international regulations are as applicable? Moving up to level 2, those are the best management practices, typically something prescriptive. We may have 4 to 8 different BMPs here at level 2 that then moving into level 3 typically are incorporated into a more formal management plan and an inventory. So let's do a measurement of what is the impact. From there, can use inventory output to set reduction targets and demonstrate meeting reduction targets at levels 4 and 5. Minimum requirement for first certification is to be at least level 1 for all PIs, and then at least one PI has to have achieved at least 1 level 2. And then moving to the next slide.
Could I Can I interrupt just for
Oh,
1 second,
yeah,
Eleanor? Yeah, sorry. I
absolutely.
just want to point out when we're looking at these, there's a number of criteria within each level. And we're trying not to think of this as like a score. We're looking at as a benchmark and then that continuous improvement as you move down the pathway towards number 5. And these are always changing. Eleanor has organized a number of working groups for each of those performance indicators. So there's a lot going on within each of those, but just wanted to emphasize it's not necessarily a score or a bad thing to have a 1.
Oh, yeah, not at all, not at all. Yeah, very much about continual improvement. So starting wherever you're at with the initial benchmarking and then using the performance indicator often is kind of like a planning tool of what you want to implement year on year for improving performance as per the performance indicators. Where every year we're taking a look at the performance indicators, making sure that they go above and beyond regulations, reflect best practices, incorporate feedback from the participants who have gone through the process, etc. Okay, did I get it? Okay, so this slide I would say is kind of like your main takeaway. If you have one that you remember from this presentation on Green Marine being a voluntary environmental certification program, it is our certification process. So it's an annual process. Every year, our participants are going through and conducting a self-evaluation. We've invested in an online software called the SMART Guide that facilitates kind of stepping through each performance indicator, each level, each of the criteria, to then generate the levels achieved, levels 1 through 5. To achieve the first certification, those results are then verified with one of our independent third-party verifiers. Their verifier will log on, go through the collected documentation and evidence to understand that, yes, they really have met the criteria that they have claimed to met to achieve the levels reported. And then all of those results get compiled and published in our annual performance report, which I mentioned. That's kind of the main deliverable that's released in June at the Green Tech Conference. And then kind of year on year, Adrian talked about how do you maintain your certification. There's a commitment for continual improvement. So while a participant still has a level 1 in their prior year's results, they get extra attention to make sure they will move up at least 1 level in at least 1 performance indicator year on year until they've reached level 2 across the board. And our certified participants have the right to use the certified logo. That's what you see on the right-hand side of the slide. Next slide. So choosing transparency, we feel this is a big way that we earn our credibility as a certification program. We've talked about how we go above and beyond regulations, and I can tell you that it is an effort when you have across various states, various Canadian provinces, all the different diversity across our participants. It is a very continual process, making sure we're doing that monitoring and development to go above and beyond. So continual improvement is not just applicable for our participants in their levels of performance achieved, but also on staff as we administer the program. We feel that's a big way we build trust with our stakeholders, bringing them to the table to really inform the performance indicators. We're only a staff of 7, but with a membership of over 500, we're very reliant and grateful for those who volunteered to support that development and helping to define ambitious goals. Often when we're developing performance indicators, it starts at what's level 5? What is excellence in leadership? And then kind of working backwards and fleshing out the PEI. Okay, next slide. A little bit more on the why Green Marine. So not only are we providing the tools of the program of performance indicators, but we're also helping to tell the story, helping to shine a light on the maritime industry. We have a number of publications. We have our LinkedIn account. The image on the left is from one of our social media campaigns last year. You can see Port of Bellingham helped promote that. Bottom left is a promotion of one of our sessions at Green Tech. I think you might see Jeff Wingfield from Port of Stockton in there talking about community engagement for urban ports. We have a monthly newsletter. Our magazine comes out twice a year and has gone fully digital. So these are various different ways that we get to push out the success stories and often cover the scope that's not explicitly already covered within the performance indicators. So there's a number of ways that Green Marine pushes out our own publications, and then Green Marine also supports our participants and they're telling their own story. So we help with providing like the text and the images to make sure we're all kind of on brand and telling the same narrative of who we are and what we do. And the big thing that we do every year is our Green Tech Conference. We're coming up to our 18th annual in 2025, which will be in New Orleans. You're all invited. We do have commissioners and port directors and environmental managers all across the various different like workforce users come to join us. Various different topics presented for exchanging lessons learned. Big focus in the last couple years has been decarbonization. We like to talk about ecosystems, underwater noise seems to be a hot topic year on year. Bigger emphasis recently on sustainable shipbuilding with our own unique shipyard program or set of performance indicators. Of course, we're addressing alternative energy. New at Green Tech 2024 was a session on Arctic shipping as we're growing our membership and seeing what is of interest for them. It's a great conference. We have been selling out the last couple of years, over 300 attendees. And call for speakers will be coming out this fall. So stay in touch. If you're not already, I welcome you to subscribe to our mailing list to see the announcement for call for speakers, any other conference information, as well as see our publications. Lots of information up on our website, going back to our commitment for transparency. And then to highlight specifically the Port of Bellingham here, the 2023 results. You can see we have in gray regulatory compliance being level 1, Port of Bellingham results shown in green, going above and beyond level 1 in 4 different PIs already. And then Green Marine certified ports in blue. I also did a little analysis of certified ports in their first and second year of reporting, which might be more representative of the Port of Bellingham peer group to see that you really are kind of keeping pace with that group of participants as well. Included on the bottom left of this slide is the unique URL for the Port of Bellingham. Each of our participants get their own kind of profile on our webpage that allows for a specific spot to promote results and other success stories that then participants can also link to within your website. And so then kind of what's coming up is we've already published the 2024 program following the prior year's worth of development. So come January 2025, you'll do the 2024 self-evaluation. So seeing what new criteria have been implemented over the year, collecting the documentation to have kind of like that tangible evidence. Alternating years is still just a self-report, but the year after then would be verification. And so that would be on the 2025 performance reported on in 2026. So we're always kind of dealing with multiple annual cycles at once. So that was kind of a high level who we are with Green Marine, and I'll hand it back over to Adrian to talk more about kind of port specific application.
Yeah, so that should be clear as mud now. Eleanor and I are very happy to answer any questions anybody has, and I'll put my email up on the end. I do have some more slides, so if you wouldn't mind. Thank you, Eleanor. Hang on, our folks here are going to put that back up. Thank you. So I wanted to mention here, yeah, you can see the Port of Bellinghams are the green bar on the screen, on the graph on the left. And it's interesting, like, we will definitely be moving ahead at least one, if not 2 bars or performance indicators the next time around. For some of these, for example, with the greenhouse gas one, we actually meet the criteria for performance indicator level 3, but because we're missing some documentation in level 2, we don't qualify for either of them. So we'll jump ahead in some of those, but it's been really good to give us some tools to think about what we need to be documenting and writing down, because you find throughout the port, I mean, we all have so much institutional knowledge and need to spend some time writing things down. So it's been good to give us kind of more tools to do that. So I will move along here with just a couple more slides. This is long, I know. Okay, so why certify at all? Environmental stewardship has really been part of the port's core values, and we see that annually. It's being solidified in our comprehensive planning and budgeting processes. So Green Marine, we feel like, is a really good fit with that. As far as risk mitigation, it helps us with things like public perception. If we miss an opportunity to improve an industry or a community expected issue, this provides guardrails, such as guidance for identifying and meeting appropriate criteria, like I mentioned with the documentation of things, and it really emphasizes that continuous improvement. It provides standardized, repeatable metrics that we can be comparing with ourselves year over year, as well as with other ports in the program as well. So that industry relevance and networking has been really, really great for us to be able to talk to other ports and other associations and networks as well. It's been very valuable for us. Eleanor mentioned that the Alaska Marine Highway System is certified as well, so we do have some tenants that are interested in this and already certified. This also helps us build on our climate action strategy. There's a lot of synergies with the things that are in our climate action strategy, so it gives us those guardrails, again, to overuse that word, as we move forward with our climate action strategy goals and targets. And it also drives other initiatives in communication, and those could be anything like our green financing opportunities we learned about in our Green Tech conference that we went to this year, business development, and I mentioned collaboration with other ports. So other benefits to the port, this leverages the work that we're doing already, gives us a little more credit for the things that we're doing already. It helps guide our future work, really provides a framework for continuous improvement, gives us those networking and education opportunities, as well as provides a good marketing tool for us for the shipping terminal. So to scope what is included in Green Marine for the Port of Bellingham, it's not the entire port. It doesn't apply to the marinas, the airport, or most of the tenant operations. It does apply to the shipping terminal, so BST is Bellingham Shipping Terminal, BCT is Bellingham Cruise Terminal, so that's Ferry Terminal in Fairhaven, and C Street, which is over here on C Street, just close to our admin building. So those are the three terminals that this applies to. And then other port-wide functions that support the marine terminals, like environmental, maintenance, and real estate, are also included in that as well. So we completed our self-report for the first time in early 2023. That was against the 2022 program. In early 2024, we had our self-report submitted, and then we did our third-party verification, and the report from that third-party verifier is available on our website now. We've been recognized by Green Marine on their emails that go to their huge network, on their website, and at the Green Tech Conference, which was in Halifax this year. We have our official certification, so we're now able to use that logo, which we share with the 188 other certified members. So next up, we'll be posting more information on our social media channels. We are able to use that logo, as I mentioned, so we'll be discussing how best to use that and advertise the fact that we are recognized by Green Marine. As I mentioned, we'll be doing more self-reporting, so the next one is due in spring of 2025, and then the conference will be in New Orleans in June of 2025, and then we'll have our biannual third-party verification in spring of 2026. And, last but not least, we'll be definitely working to increase those performance indicators. We have a lot going on already, so that's it for slides. Does anybody have any questions or discussion for Eleanor and I?
Who wants to start? Commissioner Shepherd.
Sure. Would you go back to the slide that has our scoring or our initial benchmarks, as we're calling it? So tell us about some of the data that goes into these for, air emissions. We're just drawing from the terminals and the cruise terminal. So are we tracking emissions from those ships that are coming in?
We are now. So one of the levels is to have a port-wide inventory, which we've done, but that has not included vessels yet. So I've just actually contracted with someone to help us with the vessel emissions.
And so as we ramp up things like availability of shore power, we could see that having a positive impact on that scoring potentially?
Definitely. Yep. As Eleanor mentioned, once you get further ahead, it's having targets and meeting them and reducing things like our greenhouse gas emissions, yeah.
And what about community impacts and community relations? What kind of data points are we working from to identify that scoring?
So with that performance indicator, and Eleanor, feel free to jump in on this one because I can't remember off the top of my head all of them, but a lot of them are more qualitative than quantitative. So do you have a procedure to let the community know what activities are happening, if there's going to be changes in an activity or in a customer base, for example? So one thing that we're doing at the port is really using Green Marine performance indicators to help us determine better ways to vet long-term tenants for the shipping terminal. And we're seeing that in place now as we are doing that with some potential new customers and tenants there.
Yeah, and the way we kind of differentiate between the community impacts performance indicator and the newer community relations performance indicator, community impacts is looking at more like noise, light, odor, dust, those types of nuisances to the community. So is there monitoring in place? Kind of the characterization of what is the impact. Sometimes it's really hard to actually like quantify amount of dust. But for other impacts, if there's like ambient air quality monitoring, like that's a criteria that can be written around in a community impacts performance indicator. And then on community relations, it's more, is there kind of a two-way street really in terms of understanding who are your affected stakeholders, characterizing them, making sure they have an opportunity to participate in port activity. And of course, it progresses up from levels 1 to level 5. So something that's like a big co-creation project that the community is really active, engaged with the port, that would be more up at level 5, but making sure you at least have contact information posted on your website, showing that you do have external communications. Those are kind of around levels 2 and levels 3.
Go back to the graph, if you would. The difference between the left and right-hand side graphs, the green seems to stay the same, but the blue changes quite a bit. For example, community impacts, the blue is 3.5, but community impacts on the right indicates the blue is a lot less than the green. Am I missing
So
something?
the color legend is that the blue on the left is the average across all certified ports, across, I think it's 52 certified ports across the US and Canada. So that's how you have numbers that are not integers. And then over on the right are the integers that are specifically the Port of Bellingham levels achieved, which should track back to the green on the left.
Okay.
QA is perpetual, so if you see anything inconsistent, we should pick that up.
Okay. Tell us more about how this might help us evaluate potential cargo or partners that we could have at, say, the shipping terminal or other facilities.
It's not prescriptive necessarily. So they do leave a fair amount up to what is appropriate in the region and in your community. And so with this one, like for example, we've decided as a group that doing site visits is important to us to understand the potential impacts to our port so that we can see it with our own eyes. And we've had folks go out to those potential tenants and customer sites as well. But then I think the most important thing to come out of Green Marine is, are you evaluating what you need to evaluate, like permits that may be necessary, and getting those conversations started early on in those discussions about whether or not that tenant or customer would be appropriate here. And having them have a better understanding about their needs, especially if they're not local or don't have that local experience.
And we find that Green Marine serves as a really good platform to bring together the Port Authority and the terminal operator. And so there's kind of that common vocabulary. And often for a smaller port in particular, who's working very collaboratively with their terminal operator, it's a great way to be like, I don't really care who does it, as long as it gets done, you can both report to it. But other than that, we try to be very specific to the certification, giving credit to what is within the care and control of the specific participant.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, could we go back to the slide that has the little dots around the continent there?
Oops.
So I noticed, unless I'm missing one, nothing in Oregon, no one in Oregon is participating?
That's a question.
Beaver
for
Transportation, tug and barge company on the Columbia, is part of the program.
Oh, okay.
I can share earlier on, there were a number of conversations with the Port of Portland, but kind of change in leadership and some lost business there kind of made it challenging to take on a voluntary certification program. But yeah, you're correct.
And then further up, you mentioned one in Alaska, but it looks like it is the Port of Ketchikan. Are they participating? Is that the blue dot?
Not yet, so if you'd like to apply some peer pressure, that's welcome.
Okay.
What is that second highest blue on the ship owner, Eleanor?
Looks like June.
That might be Sam Towage up in Prince Rupert.
Okay.
Is that what you're looking at?
Yes, that kind of looks like it's in
In Ketchikan.
Ketchikan to me.
Yeah, it looks more like Ketchikan, but
Okay.
we're looking at a
I'm
very
just
rough.
curious, because they've got a pretty big shipyard there for, I'm just assuming that was. Next question, with regards to emissions with around the ports, are we looking into our commercial, like fishing fleet, our recreational fleet, their tier 3, tier 4 engines, are those listed? Is that, do they go in depth that far into this with emissions, or is that just kind of, we look past our huge fleet that's tied up here that?
So the scope that I've contracted with for this year is to have folks look at the commercial fleet, so tier 3, tier 4 engines, so not the recreational fleet at this point. It's just a lot, as you can imagine. So we're taking steps as we get better with it.
I was curious what depth, where we were going to go with it, if that was going
Yeah.
to be included in that. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Mine is a jurisdictional question. So specifically with the sound, where does our responsibility start and end? And when does it become the bay? And who's responsible for noise and the like there?
For emissions, the first part of your question, or
Noise
for
was
everything?
More, yeah, everything would be a good one, but I'm thinking noise. We
Yeah.
have no control after a certain point, right? Because it's well out of our jurisdiction.
And that's not part of this. They're not expecting us to be able to control vessels out in Rosario. That's not part of it. That is the specific indicators for that are, do you have a communication in place, could be in our agreements, in our berthing agreements, for example, that say, do not use your ship siren unless there's an emergency. That could be it. So that, we're still working out some of the details for us. That's one of the ones we're working on still. But yeah, no, it doesn't expect accountability beyond what we have control over.
Yeah, I can share in the development of the Aquatic Ecosystems Performance Indicator. It was released in the 2023 program. And then for the 2024 program, one of the edits was to remove language around the zone of influence, that we want to give credit for ports who are taking like broader initiatives. But I'm sure I relate with you've seen one port, you've only seen one port. For us to come up with definitions of whether it's this many miles or within proximity of this many residents, we were really challenged to come up with kind of those boundaries. So instead, we more come up with kind of prescriptive direction of how to define a boundary that's appropriate for the port itself, where you're operating. I hope that helps add some detail.
And then, are the standards for 24 and 25 the same as they were in 23? Or are there some markers that have moved? Why do you both smile when I ask that? It's like you
Yes,
looked at
yes.
each other and,
So every year, there are, we like to say incremental improvements. So while we try to keep the program largely consistent year on year so that it can be used as a planning tool, we're also committed to continual improvement and kind of raising the bar year on year. And particularly when there's new regulations, if something becomes no longer voluntary of the program and we have to find something else in its place. So in July, we host a big info session. All of our participants can join the Zoom and we talk through like the markups from one year to the next. For example, taking out that vocabulary of zone of influence. I don't recall right off the top of my head, it's kind of like what are the big ones, but yes, they do adapt kind of year on year. And then our 2025 program will come out at the beginning of 2025.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if you want to watch the whole info session, we can get you a link on YouTube.
Anything else? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, with that, we have one agenda item. Carrie?
Yeah. Motion to approve the tolling agreement as presented to the commission and authorize the executive director to execute the tolling agreement.
Holly Stafford.
Hello. You guys want to joke? All right. Where do bad rainbows go? Yeah. To Prism. It's a light sentence. It gives them time to reflect. Oh, I wish Tamara was here. I'm like, Thank you.
That took
Thank
some
you for the
thought.
courtesy laugh. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Holly Stafford, CSD, Attorneys at Law, and Port General Counsel. Today, we have before you a tolling agreement to approve with Georgia Pacific. It's brought by both legal and port staff. The reason we're bringing this to you today is out of an abundance of caution due to the possible running of a statute of limitations on some of the port's claims regarding Georgia Pacific contributing to environmental cleanup costs. So I don't have any slides, but I have this great visual aid. So this, as some of you may recall, is the purchase and sale agreement for Georgia Pacific from 2005. I don't think they make a binder bigger than what this document takes up. So back in 2005, when the port acquired the properties from GP, it acquired a number of environmental sites. The Whatcom Waterway, GP West, Central Waterfront, Cornwall Landfill, and the GP Airport Landfill. And of course, all of those sub-sites, the remedial action units that make those sites up. So the parties knew this going into it, and as you can see by the breadth and depth of that document, everything was thought out ahead of time. So that includes how to pay for the costs of cleanup between GP and the port. So, excuse me, the port contains an allocation of environmental liability section that breaks down what the port was taking responsibility for in terms of the cleanup costs. For a couple of the sites, the port's liability is limited to the extent of coverage that's available under the insurance policy that was purchased by the port and by GP at the time. Regardless, the PSA provides that other than as specifically provided for, or after exhaustion of the limits of insurance, environmental liability will be allocated between the two parties under applicable law, subject to the limitations in the agreement itself. So looking ahead, we know that there will be environmental liability to allocate between both the port and Georgia Pacific. Port staff and legal have been in discussions with GP about these unallocated costs in an effort to work through this issue. It's been a pretty cooperative discussion. While we may not agree on everything, we're moving forward with one another, which brings us to the purpose of the agreement. So the Model Toxics Control Act contains a statute, or part of that statute has a 3-year statute of limitations. That means that the port can only bring a claim within 3 years of a certain event. And the way the statute describes it, it's 3 years from the time remedial action confirms cleanup standards are met. What does that mean? There is some debate within the legal community about what exactly triggers that statute of limitations. And sometimes the courts in Washington look to federal courts that have interpreted CERCLA when they're looking at MACA, and it's not always a great fit. So one argument is that the earliest that the statute could start to run, so that clock starts to tick, is when ecology selects a cleanup remedy for a site and establishes cleanup levels. For formal cleanups, like the chloralkali remedial action unit of the GP West site, that is when ecology finalizes a cleanup action plan. And for that particular remedial action unit, the cleanup action plan, or the CAP, was finalized September 7th, 2021. So I know you guys can all do math. I'm not used to it being September yet, but we're coming up on 3 years this coming Saturday. So rather than risking arguing with Georgia Pacific later on about when did the statute of limitations begin to run, when did it expire, or forcing the parties into court to litigate over this issue, Georgia Pacific has agreed to execute a tolling agreement with the port. So this tolling agreement that's before you today essentially pauses the clock on the statute of limitations so that it does not continue to run. So even though we have essentially, at the earliest, 4 more days until that statute runs, we will always have those 4 more days before the statute runs. And this makes sense in light of the context that we're discussing these issues with Georgia Pacific. This particular tolling agreement has a set term of 3 years to give us time to work through these issues, but either party may terminate it upon 30 days' notice. And that's important. So if something happens, if the discussions break down, if things become adversarial, either party has the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to give you 30 days' notice. So if you want to run into court and go ahead and preserve your rights that way, that's fine. The tolling agreement is going to go away. So that is really it about the agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the agreement itself or this process. I know my legal lectures are particularly exciting, so.
Mr. Shepard? Sure. A frequent, which I believe misnomer I hear, is that the port took GP's property and GP got off the hook for any future environmental liability.
Yes.
Tell us about that being a misnomer, and characterize the type of interaction that the port has with GP on an ongoing basis.
Right. So Alan Birdsall at the port has done a fantastic job through the course of after the port acquired the property and since then, keeping Georgia Pacific as well as the insurance carrier AIG up to date on I think it's a monthly, or is it quarterly reports? No. Monthly reports with backup documentation. So Georgia Pacific and the insurance carrier know what the port is up to, what the burn rate is, what the port is going to be up to soon. And we have, I think it's quarterly discussions now with GP's legal counsel as well as GP principals who were involved back at the beginning when the port acquired the property about how to deal with these unallocated costs. I kind of facetiously broke out this document because there is a section that defines here is what the allocated environmental liabilities are, and the port only accepted a certain amount. If it's not specifically allocated to the port, it may be that it's specifically allocated to Georgia Pacific, or it falls within that kind of whole of the donut in those unallocated costs, which we will be just continuing to discuss with Georgia Pacific. So you're right, it is a bit of a misconception that when the port acquired that property in 2005, that the port acquired all of that liability. That's just not the case. And also as to that insurance policy, it's about a $52 million insurance policy, and Georgia Pacific and the port also both contributed to the costs of that policy.
So that we and the public can both expect that Georgia Pacific will continue to be engaged in both collaboration with our organization and involved in future expenses to continue to clean up a very large project. We've done a massive amount of work, spent a huge amount of money to get where we are with doing lots of cleanup already, but there's still lots to do. And some of the most complicated ones are still to come. And so that, we have put in the work needed to maintain that relationship and that expectation of future involvement from GP.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Port staff has done a fantastic job for almost 20 years now. This isn't just something where GP is just now hearing from us because we're looking to them for some additional funds for the environmental cleanups. It's been an ongoing relationship, a first name basis, if you will. But right now, the status of things is very cooperative. Like I said, GP signed the tolling agreement first, and they've been asking me, where is it? Because no one wants to go running into court or worry about that statute of limitations. Instead, we want that time in order to come to an agreement, hopefully, in terms of how to go forward with those unallocated costs.
You've got nothing? I have that. Have we exhausted the $50 million, obviously?
No. No, but again, Port staff does a really good job of keeping track of things and knowing, based on what's in the hopper, where grant funding is coming from, what that's looking like. It kind of has a good sense of what things are kind of coming at us.
As well as MOTCA.
Right. Yep, the grant funding that's what I meant, the remedial action grants.
The insurance policy is still in place.
It is, and I think that's an interesting point because just in terms of the lifetime of these projects, again, this transaction occurred in 2005, really late 2004. The insurance policy is effective from December 31st, 2004 until December 31st, 2034. So the insurance carrier, Georgia Pacific, the port, Ecology, everybody knew that we were looking at 30 years plus in terms of how long it was going to take, at least not even to get the projects done, but to expend that amount of money on the projects.
And the negotiations now, you say it will continue with not in an adversarial role. I mean, we're working very well with GP on this.
Yeah, that is our hope. Was it about a year ago, Rob? I think 2 years ago, Rob and Brian and I flew down to Atlanta, met with GP at their headquarters, gave them a great presentation about what the port was up to. And I do also, have to give a shout out to the pump track, because one of the things that GP has been really excited about is how the Port of Bellingham has activated that property while the cleanups are underway, essentially, and they want a whole bunch of details about, well, how did you get people down there? That looks really interesting, and we've offered to host them to come out, sometime during the summer and spend some time down at trackside and really see what the vibe is like, if you will. But that's the type of relationship that we have with GP at this point. Like I said, our expectation is that will continue.
Yeah, it's in their interest as well.
It
to
is.
maintain that, yeah. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
So does that mean we expect to have all of that insurance policy money spent by 2034? And that will take us through, will that have taken us through the remainder of the cleanups?
I see you're looking at Brian Gowron, who's probably in a better situation to answer that question in terms of where we'll be.
It feels a long ways away, but these things take forever.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Is that on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, we expect to expend all of the insurance money. So that's exactly why we're been working with GP now. Just we saw that we projected that we know, like Holly said, what's in the hopper. As projects move through and we go into construction, that's where a lot of we've been in study mode for years, So once you go into construction, that's when that really gets spent down. So we've completed Whatcom Waterway Phase 1. We did the GP site. We've had some interim actions. And we're projecting that the next few projects, Whatcom Waterway Phase 2 in particular, and then, the chlor-alkali cleanup, those will push us over the edge there. That we will probably be well before 2035, hopefully. But that'll happen. But there's other pieces of the insurance that stay on once we've expended that funding. So we expect in the next few years we'll be close to starting to go through the remainder of the insurance funding.
So those are the ones that remain: Whatcom Waterway Phase 2, and then chlor-alkali.
Yeah, we actually have, I mean, we still have, so the Cornwall Avenue landfill, that's expected to start construction here early next year. We have the chlor-alkali remedial action unit, which is kind of where the southern portion of the GP site. We have Whatcom Waterway Phase 2. And then we also have the Central Waterfront site, which is where the Marine Trades area is, which is where the F Street warehouse, Colony Wharf, and a few of those areas, they have some kind of spot areas that need to be addressed. We've done some interim work there as well. So we did some work already last year. We had some treatment trenches. We did an excavation before. So we've been picking away at these. Some are full-on large projects like the downtown waterfront area where the pump track is. We did that all in one fell swoop. And then some other ones we're kind of doing, where there are opportunities or when there's projects that come together at the same time, like All American Marine, for example. When that project got built, we did that as an interim action so that we could build the building there, get any of the cleanup work out of the way ahead of that, then build the building. So we do these, approach them in a number of different ways. But those all then spend down some of that insurance funding as well as then the MODCA grants that we have.
Dare I bring up the ASB?
That one,
Phase 2.
Yeah, that'll be in Phase 2. Yes, that's all part of the Whatcom Phase 2. Yeah.
but that one doesn't qualify for the insurance plan.
That's not covered. Yeah, insurance. Yeah, wise.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Carrie.
All right. Motion to approve the tolling agreement as presented to the commission and authorize the executive director to execute the tolling agreement.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard?
I'm a yes.
And Commissioner Bell is also a yes. Thank you. All right, with that, we will open the floor for public comment one more time. Anybody online? It doesn't look like it. And anybody in the audience wishing to speak? Well, welcome. When did you wander in?
Good afternoon, Dan Tucker, Whatcom Working Waterfront Coalition. Just wanted to say thank you on behalf of of Carrie working on Dockside Markets Education Day coming up this coming weekend. We're excited to see that happen, and we're also excited to see all of these developments for the cleanup happen around the waterfront. I wanted to thank the staff especially for all of their hard work in getting those documents and getting this ongoing relationship going so that we can utilize our waterfront to its full potential again. So just a friendly thank you for all the hard work you're doing.
Thank you. Anyone else? With that, we'll go to other business. Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, I wanted to just share some thanks for the event that happened last week, Blue Schools event that we helped sponsor. It was really nice to see a group of both industry representatives, nonprofits, the Whatcom Community Foundation, Working Waterfront Coalition, and then the school district, Meridian School District there with Superintendent Everett, all coming together to talk about ways that we're creating that pathway for marine trades workforce, not just from college on, but how can we start earlier? How can we get this into high school and middle school so that these conversations are really occurring for students when they're young, when they're thinking about their futures, and how they're connecting their potential employment with what they're doing in school. So really nice to have that group meeting together, and I appreciate the team from Port Townsend who helped facilitate and put that on. I'm just really thrilled that the Meridian School District is thinking about those pathways and bringing them in for those young students. My other one was, it is already September, which means we get to start thinking about October, which is Sea Feast. Carrie, do you have anything for us about what we should expect in terms of dates or anything? I didn't give you a heads up on this ahead of time, but who can?
Probably Stephanie is the best to answer that.
Stephanie.
Yeah, I don't work on Sea Feast.
I'm in the room though, so it's good. Yeah, so Sea Feast this year is the first weekend in October. Once again, super excited for that event. Kevin and his whole team at Bellingham Sea Feast have been putting together a really great program. We'll have Dockside Market on Saturday as a part of the festivities, a ton of food trucks. I believe there's going to be a pinball tournament as a part of the event this year. They'll have makers and local crafts vendors selling their goods, and just lots of activity. I think an expanded beer garden this year. They're going for a larger beer garden, which is fun, and live musical performances in the park as well. So looking to be another really good event. They're also going to be doing a 5K, if I'm right. They're going to be doing a 5K on Sunday. So if you want to come out and run a 5K in the harbor, that will be another fun activity as a part of the event.
So we get to work off some of the feasting.
Yeah, work off some of the feasting. Come and feast on Saturday and then run on Sunday. Really carbo load and you'll be good to go.
All right, great event. Looking forward to it.
In college, I burned off a lot of calories on the pinball machine. The week before finals was I was in the zone the week before finals, so I'll be playing.
Good. That's it for me.
Commissioner Briscoe? That's when Elton John came out with it, Pinball Wizard, and it just rocking to that while we were,
Who came out with that?
well, the Who did, but his version. You didn't think I'd know, did you?
I was just checking.
I was that much of a junkie.
So, paperwork. Our staff does a tremendous amount of paperwork, and I spoke with, I don't know if I spoke with Tiffany too much about this, but I talked with Aaron a little bit. I was in Alaska this year. They'd done some changes up there in some of the harbors. In particular, their cranes are now credit card operated. You want to use a crane, use a credit card, and it's so many minutes for so many dollars. And I'm thinking that, that's maybe something we want to look at. And I spoke with Aaron about it. He was down the boat when I got back. And then the other thing is I was using the forklift a fair amount when I got home from Alaska, moving stuff around. And I go in and I look at that tray in the harbor office is about that deep with paperwork. Everybody that uses has to fill out the paperwork. It's all handwritten. And then it comes over here to the port office. And we have a staff person, I'm assuming, that has to go through that pile of paperwork and figure out how many minutes we used it and this and that. And I'm thinking, with the technology where it's at in this day and age, I would think that each person in the harbor that's got moorage is using this equipment could have a fob or some kind of card that we swipe at the office, and you get the key to the forklift and you swipe it when you come back, and we can eliminate some of this man hours on paperwork. I mean, it just seems like we could do something better than what we're doing to trim things down for our staff. I mean, I look at that and I think, I would hate to sit there at the end of the month and go through every page, or every week for that matter, when you've got things going full blown. I mean, I'm sure in the wintertime it's a little bit slower, but holy cow. So I was just wondering if we couldn't look into some things to see if we could cut our.
Definitely. We're always looking for efficiencies. That's why we went cashless mostly in the harbors, was because we were spending staff time with dual control and counting. And so I hear what you're saying. You're looking for more automated and maybe online form submission.
I'm not trying to get rid of a job, just trying to slow down the headache of adding all that stuff up every month.
Yep, we'll take a look at it.
And then, our crane gets used a lot, and we're not really incurring or not bringing money back for the use of that crane. And so the public in Whatcom County is supporting the use of that crane where it stands now. And I think maybe it's about time we started getting a little money back from the users on that crane. I mean, I don't like to inflict monetary pain on anybody, but there's monetary pain with keeping those cranes up. They're heavily used, and they're heavily used by some people that don't pay moorage in this harbor. So I'd like to see something that was really, at first, it used to be everywhere was free up there, just like here. And now they've changed, and I was kind of balked at it first, and I started thinking about it. And it's really simple. You just swipe your card, and how many minutes you want, swipe the card, and away you go. It's pretty easy. And it would help us with the maintenance and the upkeep of our cranes. And maybe we could gather enough to get a better crane at some point in time. So, just food for thought. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna wanna shoot darts at me for that one, but that's the way it goes. We gotta keep up with the times a little bit, so it's either get a little money here and there to help maintenance, or we raise the rates, so, mortgage rates, so we gotta keep up somehow, so. That's all I had. That's enough gas on the fire.
Me. Couple things for me. Are you messing with me? The first one is, I wanted to,
What's going on?
well, some of this made me happy. First of all, I'm just really pleased, didn't want to gloss over this in the consent agenda, that we've got Amtrak back for another 25 years. And that's a big deal to have that train working through our transportation system. So I just wanted to make note of that. That's a big deal. And I love it for going down to Mariners games, so that being said. The second one is I got a call this week from one of my old staff in Antarctica. And it's a great story, so you get to indulge me a little bit. And the first thing that popped up on me, your screen said Green Wave, and that was the name of the first boat that I ever loaded from Antarctica back to here. It was called the Green Wave. So it's been an Antarctic kind of day. But anyway, we have 3 helicopters out at the airport from the U.S. Antarctic program that are going to be staged out there for the next few months, and she's bringing her whole crew in. So it's one of my former crew members who is now working for the helicopter crew. And they're going to be staging 3 of the U.S. Antarctic program helicopters out there for some training and some maneuvers. And they're going to be holding up at our airport. So hadn't heard from her in a few years, so I thought it was just interesting and nice. So you can go by, do a drive-by in the airport, and you'll see helicopters that fly their staff around.
Well, let me know if you want to get out on the airfield when they're here and make an introduction. I
I'd
know
love
someone
it.
that can get you out there.
Yeah. Okay. And my shout out to Haley Gruber. Thanks. Thanks, Hale. And then had a chance to take the family out on one of the All-American Marine new ferry boats out to do some whale watching. One of the most incredible boats you've ever been on. It's quiet, it's luxurious, it was absolutely amazing. And the Pride had no idea I was stepping onto one when I was, but absolutely an amazing piece of machinery coming right out of our operations here. So I just want to shout out to All-American Marine for putting a quality product on the market. And then this one is an announcement that we're going to be up in Blaine on September 19th, talking to the Blaine City Council about what we have planned for Blaine, what they have in mind for us. It'll be a joint Port Commission County City Council meeting. I just wanted to put that on the radar screen because we've got some things to talk about with the City of Blaine. We've got a lot going on up there. Then the last one is I want to give you a couple weeks' notice. Can we just get an update on the airport next Port Commission meeting?
Sure, you
With
bet.
all that's going on out there. And maybe a couple of shots of the helos while we're there.
We'll try and get some pictures for you.
I'll go out and take a look. And that's all I got. You're not allowed. Go ahead.
So, as commissioners, we get busy. I know I get very busy, and we forget the things that staff and our executive director and everyone does here at the port daily as we run around and do our stuff and try and keep up with stuff going on here. So I'd just like to say thank you to all of our entire staff for the job you do every day, all year long, so that we can sit up here and be happy about the port we have. But it's because of our staff. It's not because of us. Thank you.
Chime in one thing on All American Marine. I'd just like to echo, they've been a great partner as well to the port. We work with them as running the boat launch, and so when they're doing sea trials, oftentimes it coincides with any kind of opening for recreational or commercial or any of that. And so they've just been super collaborative with the harbor master and their operations team as far as when we have to clear it out and make room. So we appreciate that.
Well, they're a great success story. They're bursting at the seams. So our next job is going to be to give them more room. But what a great company. All right, with that, meeting adjourned.